On those Dos Equis commercials, they have the most interesting man in the world. But today, I'm going to talk about
Greek
someone who could
fuckboy?
actually possibly be one of the most interesting men in the world. Alcibiades,
Won't be the judge of that.
who was a general, orator, and politician during the Peloponnesian War.
Okay.
In my video on that war, I breezed through most of the second half of it for brevity's sake, but today, we'll slow right down and look just at what exactly went so horribly wrong with Athens through the lens of the incomparable Alcibiades. Now, Alcibiades is indisputably the most attractive man in the ancient world. That's a fact, and it's very important for the story.
Okay.
Basically, if you combine the attractiveness of George Clooney, Chris Evans, and Henry Cavill, you'll get Alcibiades on an off day, like when he's just gotten up in the morning. That's the kind of attractiveness we're talking about with this guy. Alcibiades also had a well-earned reputation for banging just about everybody, and he also had a terrible knack for convincing people to do really, really stupid things, as we'll see. Likely because of his dashing good looks and possible mind control powers. Alcibiades would go up to someone and say, "Hey, Stephanos, how's it going? Remember that time we banged last month? Not sure if you forgot, but I just wanted to remind you that I'm still totally gorgeous." You know what, Alcibiades? You're right. Here, take my money, house, wife, and firstborn daughter. You deserve it, Alcibiades. Thank you, Stephanos. Catch you on the flip side. And no one would question it. So we've established that Alcibiades has a little bit of Kilgrave in him, but he's also a bit of a Joker character. So he's the ancient world's foremost crazed supervillain. And with that out of the way, to history. In 415 BC, in the middle of a period of peace between Athens and Sparta, Athens' ally Egesta appealed for help against Syracuse. In the Athenian assembly, they were debating what to do about this when Alcibiades said, "Guys, I've got an idea, and I'm gorgeous, so you're going to listen to me." And everyone said, "You got it, Alcibiades, we're listening." He said, "How about, while we're in Sicily defending Egesta, let's just go and take the rest of Sicily too. We'll kick out Syracuse, those dirty Spartan sympathizers, and the whole thing will be ours. We'll have more of an empire because that's totally awesome." And Nicias gets up, who was a guy who had organized a peace 6 years prior that stopped the fighting between Athens and Sparta, so he did not like war and expansion-y thingies, and said, "Alcibiades, that's a terrible idea. I think we should absolutely not do that." To which Alcibiades said, "Let's put it to a vote. Who wants to go and invade Sicily?" Everyone raises their hand, and Nicias falls back in his chair like,
he like popularity contest him, dude. He fucking, shut up, nerd. He mocked him. Dude, public vote when the other guy's balding? That's crazy. He just fucking...
Crap, Alcibiades strikes again. Okay, guys, here, how about this? If we really wanted to invade Sicily, we'd need a stupidly huge navy. I mean, we already have a big navy, but we need 200 ships to go and invade Sicily, and there's no way we could do that. And Alcibiades gets up again and says, "Guys, I think that Nicias over here has given us a perfect solution to this problem. How about we raise a giant navy of 200 ships and go over to Sicily? Raise your hand if you agree." And everyone, of course, raised their hand in agreement. Nicias again is like, "Oh no." So Athens devoted the next 3 turns to production and assembled the biggest naval armada ever seen. Athens already had a huge navy, but this one was just absurd. However, a night shortly before the expedition was to leave, something curious happened to the Herms of Athens. The Herms were statues that were really just stone square torsos with a head and male genitals on them. It's the closest thing the Athenians had to...
What?
Statues that were really just stone square...
They just didn't do the body, but they added the nuts. If it was just the head, I get it, but why add the nuts and the scrot? Why add the fucking pubes?
Torsos with a head and male genitals on them. It's the closest thing the Athenians had to minimalist art, although I feel like the Herms might find that offensive. These pieces of art, let's call them, were sacred to Hermes who watched over travelers, meaning that if anything were to happen to the Herms, it would be very bad omen for those who were traveling. Well, just before some rather big travel plans to Sicily went into motion, a group of rowdy college kids went about, let's say, de-Herming the Herms, put it that way, and that's a no-no. The next morning, Athens was up in arms about what is now called the Hermocopid conspiracy and wanted to figure out who was responsible. For some reason, Alcibiades was implicated in the treachery and accused of colluding in the conspiracy, which, if you think about it for more than 2 seconds, makes 0 sense. Alcibiades was the guy who pushed the idea of the expedition in the first place, so why would he then turn around and try to sabotage it? Admittedly, in the context of his character, as we'll see later on, it makes perfect sense, but right now, it's kinda weird. So, fine, whatever. Alcibiades goes to the assembly and says, "Hey dudes, it's me, Alcibiades. Still gorgeous, possibly more gorgeous than yesterday. I'm about to leave for this big glorious expedition thing that we have going on that we talked about last week. And if you want to put this sculpted face right here and this glorious jawline on trial, how about we do that now so you guys don't recall me in the middle of my campaign because that would be really stupid. What do you say?" And Athens collectively responds, nah, we'd rather wait until you're like just about to get to Sicily but not there yet, like right before you get there, and then recall you and probably put you on trial and possibly put you to death. Alcibiades is like, great, fine. And the expedition...
To death? For knocking the nuts off half-finished statues? He went from being he got all the votes and everyone loved him, and then possibly, maybe he knocked nuts off statues and they have to kill him? Harsh but fair.
Heads out to glorious fanfare. Their first clue that everything was going to fail horribly should have been when, while sailing around the bottom of Italy's boot, the Athenian fleet docked at towns and expected to be greeted with fanfare and a feast, but no one even bothered to show up or acknowledge them. So they carried on. As they were making their way to Sicily, Alcibiades, Nicias, who was also made a general of the expedition probably in a cruel twist of fate, and an actually good general named Lamachus were planning the expedition. Nicias proposed the smallest possible engagement and sticking to helping out Egesta and doing little else. Lamachus proposed a direct assault on Syracuse to catch them off guard and get rid of them first. Alcibiades, however, proposed that they go to Egesta first, which was on the far side of Sicily, and then work their way across the island, going town to town, amassing soldiers from the locals as they went. Even though this is a very, very stupid plan, because it gives Syracuse time to prepare because they see them coming, and as we've seen, the people of Italy do not really seem to like the Athenians much, Lamachus leaned over and said, oh, of course, anything for you, Alcibiades. We'll go with your plan because you're so totally gorgeous. Nicias said, what the hell, Lamachus? You're supposed to be smart. So right as this is happening, as they're about to land in Sicily, as the Athenians had expertly prophesied, Alcibiades gets a letter saying, hey, Alcibiades, come back to Athens.
Dude, I got 5 gifties from Alcibiades' Stan account. Perfect timing. Perfect fucking timing.
We want to put you on trial like we said we would. Alcibiades is like, crap, okay, fine. So the boat that's going to recall him to Athens shows up, and Alcibiades says, guys, I have one last request. If you would please let me take my boat back to Athens instead of this little dinghy you guys brought, because my boat's as gorgeous as I am, and I'd like to be on something equally gorgeous to me. The Athenians who were there to recall him said, okay, Alcibiades, you little scamp, sure, no problem. And they set sail, the two of them, their boats. And Alcibiades is behind the Athenian boat, couple boat lengths behind, as you're supposed to do when you're driving. And the Athenians are like, hey, Alcibiades, you're falling a little bit behind there. And he says, no, it's okay, I can do what I want, you guys are fine, just keep going, I'm here. The Athenians keep going ahead. Alcibiades falls a little bit further behind. The Athenians say, hey, Alcibiades, you still back there? And Alcibiades is like, don't worry, I'm good. I'm great. Just keep going. I'm following you. You guys are leading the way fantastically. And the Athenians keep going. Alcibiades starts peeling off more and more and more, and then goes left and pisses off to Sparta. So the Athenians are like, crap. And Alcibiades goes to the king and says, hey, Spartan king, I'm Alcibiades. I'm gorgeous. You could do with me. Spartan king says, I could do with you, hot stuff. So then Alcibiades gets a long and prosperous 2 or 3 year career of basically telling the Spartans how to defeat the Athenians, which sounds like a pretty good deal.
He just flipped sides and betrayed. Damn, what a rat fuck. I guess if you're about to be put to death over someone else knocking nuts, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Alcibiades spends some time colluding with the Spartans and doing his thing, but then eventually they kind of realized that after a son was born that looked a little bit too much like Alcibiades, that he may have been fooling around with the queen, so the Spartan king said, get the hell out of my house, I don't care how gorgeous you are. Clearly my wife.
Damn, he showed up, ratted on his old country, then fucked the Spartan king's wife?
Wife does. Alcibiades says bye, and then he goes over to Persia, just because why not? And he hangs out with the local governor there, a satrap called Tissaphernes, and gave him advice on how to deal with the whole Athenian-Spartan conflict that was going on. Right now, we're actually going to divert away from Alcibiades and go back to the Sicilian expedition and talk about what happened there, because it's actually kind of hilarious even without Alcibiades there. So, the Athenians were on their way from Egesta in the far west to Syracuse in the far east, trying to gather soldiers all along their way, like Alcibiades' plan called for. Okay. But perhaps unsurprisingly, no one really wanted to join them because no one outside of Athens really likes Athens all that much.
Right.
So that didn't exactly go very well, and by the time they had gotten to Syracuse, they were met by a strong Syracusan opposition, as Nicias had warned them about.
Right.
When you're sieging a city in the ancient world, the idea is that you build a wall around the city to starve them out and cut off their food supply. In the opposite order, of course. And when the Athenians tried to do that with Syracuse, they kind of failed horribly because the Syracusans were crafty and clever. So as the Athenians were building their wall across, the Syracusans shot out a perpendicular counterwall to basically stop their wall from going any further. This happened 3 more times, hilariously, until Lamachus actually died in the battle, and then it gets sad.
That's
it becomes
so
hilarious again
goated.
later, but for now it's sad. So the wall war was lost, and the Athenians went back to try and figure out what to do, since the Syracusans still had access to outside food. And this
it's funny. I've been watching some like pro AoE 2 players, and there was a guy that did that where some guy walled himself in to try and tech up, and then the other guy built a wall like 1-to-1 around his wall, walling him in, and then took the rest of the map and all the resources. He walled in his wall, and it was like, I'm not coming in. You could just stay in there. That shit was goated.
Point, Nicias was quite sick because he was staying in a nearby swamp, and he sent a letter to Athens seeking help and asking for him to be relieved because he was sick and kind of dying. The Athenians heard him loud and clear and sent a response saying, "What's that? You want us to send you more troops and keep you where you are? Don't worry, Nicias, we got you, buddy." So they sent another general after the other 2 either died or left, and this guy Demosthenes shows up. This guy's deal was always doing night attacks. Whether or not it worked, he loved to do it.
Love that.
His first brilliant plan upon showing up was to capture the strategic position of Epipolae, which was a hill outside of Syracuse. To make sure that the Athenian side didn't accidentally kill itself in the confusion and nighttime-ness, they came up with a code word which I can only presume was marshmallow. So they would be able to say marshmallow to each other and know that they were on the same side. Now, a slight, massive problem here was that the Athenians were fighting alongside Argives from Argos. Argives are Dorian. Syracusans are also Dorian. The Athenians are Ionian, which are different dialects of Greek. Now, when the Argives were getting ready for battle, they did their typical Dorian war chant. The Athenians, of course, freaked the hell out because upon hearing Dorian dialect and a war chant conspicuously close to their camp, they think, oh my god, the Syracusans have infiltrated us, we're gonna die, we need to go kill those guys. Forgetting that they have Argives right there, but I guess that kind of slips your mind in the middle of a nighttime assault. So things go wrong.
They fought their own.
The Athenians are stabbing the ever-loving hell out of these poor Argives who are screaming, "Marshmallow, marshmallow, don't kill me, marshmallow, please, marshmallow, oh god, my spleen." And the Syracusans over on the other side of the hill are like, "Hey, Stephanos, do you think that marshmallow thing is a code word? They're saying it as if to convey, I'm on your side, please don't stab me. Oh my god, why'd you stab me?" But then it seems like maybe if we use that code word, we can sneakily murder all of them. So they did, and they walked through the Athenian camp whispering, "Hey, marshmallow, stab. Marshmallow, stab. Going around whispering marshmallow and murdering everybody. So the Syracusans are killing the Athenians and the Argives. The Athenians are killing the Argives, and the Argives are patiently, not so patiently, getting murdered. So the whole experiment kind of falls apart, but that's what happens when you kill your own people thinking there's someone else. Life lessons, kids.
What in hell?
So at this point, the Athenians are starting to think maybe we should just get out of here and cut our losses. But at that moment, the Spartans show up and sort of blockade in, with the help of the Syracusan fleet, all of the Athenian ships. They fight a naval...
They built a harbor barrier. That's fucking crazy. You're trapped in here with me. They pulled a fucking... what's the guy from Watchmen? Rorschach. They pulled a Rorschach.
To try and get out, but it doesn't exactly work. So when Nicias goes back to his camp, still pneumonia'd out of his mind, he goes to the Oracle and says, "What do we do? This kind of sucks." The Oracle says, "You gotta wait 27 days before you try to retreat again." Nicias says, "All right. Fine, I'll listen to it." And his advisors say, "Nicias, that's really stupid. We should go now. We have a chance." Nicias says, "No. Shh. Oracle says." And they're like,
"Wait, where's the hot guy?"
And they do, but I'm getting there. Don't get ahead of me. So the boats are kind of wrecked because as they're staying in this swamp waiting for 27 days for a retreat, they get completely waterlogged. The thing with triremes is you got to take them out and clean them every once in a while. And when they're in a swamp, you don't get the chance to take them out and clean them every once in a while. So that doesn't really go very well, and they try instead to do a land retreat. Remember, kids, Sicily is an island. So you can probably figure out where this one's going. The sad plot twist is that the Athenians were not Jesus, so they couldn't just walk over the water and escape the whole island. They're all ultimately captured and killed. It's really sad.
What a disaster.
This is a comedy show, so I'm going to breeze right over that and get back to Alcibiades, who's in Persia, and he's giving the local governor some advice.
So Alcibiades completely fucked over Athens, went to Sparta, fucked over the queen, lefty kid, and now is in Persia, not giving a shit about the.
But he never really planned to stay in Persia for an extended period of time. His ultimate goal was to come back to Athens with a bunch of Persian money and be like, hey guys, look, it's me, Alcibiades. Still totally gorgeous, now totally rich. Aren't I awesome? You should welcome me back and not kill me like you said you would. That'd be great. So, soon enough, he leaves and goes to the nearby Athenian fleet that was tooling around in the Aegean Sea, and convinced them that the radical democracy in Athens was no good, that they should totally overthrow it and replace it with an oligarchy. An oligarchy would benefit Alcibiades.
He's a rogue felon who comes back years later, encounters the fleet, and convinces them to overthrow the government? He must be fucking hot.
Because no democracy means no death sentence for him. Thus begins the most comical political overthrow ever. So, some salient details first. The rich people of Athens really like the idea of the oligarchy because the oligarchy means they're in power, whereas democracy means those poor peasants are in power.
Right.
So, they called a meeting outside
I actually think you had to be a landowner to vote in Athens. Like, the peasants never could vote.
Athens, just outside the city walls, to discuss political stuff. The thing is, since it's outside the city walls, only the rich would have showed up because the rich people of Athens would have been able to supply their own armor and weapons. The reason armor and weapons are necessary is because usually the Spartans are outside of the Athenian walls wreaking havoc, so only those who could have protected themselves would have been not scared and gone outside. Very sneakily, you've called a meeting of only the richest people in Athens. This group of upstanding citizens did what's called suspending the graphe paranomon, which is the law against illegal laws. I know it sounds ridiculous because it is. So basically, in suspending the graphe paranomon, illegal laws are now legal, which literally means they wrote a law that got rid of the democracy and instated an oligarchy of 400 aristocrats. So in this situation, Alcibiades would be very happy because the death sentence on it is kind of gone.
What a joke.
What happened then was that the new oligarchy in Athens started executing people really harshly. And the fleet, which was oligarchic, said, no, we don't like that. We don't stand for that. And for the first time ever, created a democracy for ideological reasons rather than political reasons. Which is really interesting, but kind of ridiculous because you have an oligarchic fleet in a democratic city which flip-flops to an oligarchic city in a democratic fleet. What? But Alcibiades doesn't care because he can go on and do whatever he wants.
And he's hot.
As long as Athens isn't a democracy for the moment, the death sentence is kind of gone.
Yeah.
Which is good. So he goes around fighting some battles, doing some stuff with the fleet.
Cool,
and in 407, he goes back to Athens. And they're like, cool, Alcibiades, still gorgeous. You got that silver fox look. He's like, I know, still looking good. Always did, always will. And then they're like, hey, so Alcibiades, you're good. We like you. No death threat this time. Go out, do your stuff, keep being awesome, and win us some battles. And he's like, you know it, guys. So Alcibiades is doing his thing up until 406 at the Battle of Notion, when Alcibiades presumably had to use the restroom. So he tells one of his guys, look, I'm gonna go to the restroom. I'm gonna be gone for like 5 minutes, maybe. I need you to be in charge, but not touch anything. Don't look at the Spartans. Don't think about going to fight them if you see them, because you shouldn't see them because you shouldn't be looking at them. And just don't do anything, please.
Okay.
Just gonna be gone for like 5 minutes. You can handle this. And he's like, okay, boss, you got it. And he does the thing where he like salutes, but he hits himself in the eye because he's one of those guys. But then Alcibiades leaves. And he's like, hey, boss said we should go fight the Spartans, right? The other guy's like, yup. So they do, and they fight the Battle of Notion and lose horribly.
Okay.
And Alcibiades comes back, he's like, what the hell, guys? I was gone for like 5 minutes. The other guy's like, oops. And Alcibiades is like, okay, fine, screw this, I'm out of here. And he goes and leaves and runs off to his private castle in the northeast of Greece because he just kind of, has one of those.
He doesn't care.
The last historically significant event of Alcibiades' life was the Battle of Aegospotami, which was the last battle of the Peloponnesian War. And this battle is actually kind of funny because he's living sort of near where the battle was, so he leans over to the Athenians and he's like, hey, Athens, you're at a strategically disadvantageous position and you think you should move. Athens is like, no, shut up, Alcibiades. He's like, fine, but you're gonna lose. So they ended up losing. Alcibiades was right. And then, sort of after that, Alcibiades just kind of dies. Historical accounts of Alcibiades...
That's crazy. Bro was a lifelong menace. He did nothing. He died backseating.
Alcibiades' death are kind of all over the place, but I personally am preferential.
Died backseating in a war that he like started, or at least amped up the aggression of.
The version where his house is attacked
What
by
a
assassins
menace.
and burned down, and he jumps out with a knife like, come at me, bros. Then he gets killed by a swarm of arrows. It's not very flattering, but it's kind of cool, so that's the one I go with. But anyway, there you have it, folks. The life of arguably one of the most interesting characters in the ancient world, and in my opinion, one of the most interesting characters in all of history. It's amazing how the majority of ancient Greece's funniest stories all surround this one guy. But at the same time, how could it not? Because, I mean, look at him. He's gorgeous.
Yeah, I think the real-life Henry Cavill's wasting an opportunity to cause a lot of ruckus. He's doing the fucking Witcher when he could be, like, starting wars.